Okay, in this part of our lesson, we're going to be still working with inequalities that involve multiplying and dividing. The one thing that's slightly different is now we're going to have a negative number that's involved with our variable. So these are going to look very similar to the ones that we've previously done. We'll still follow a lot of the same steps, but there's one special thing that we have to do when we're working with negative numbers. So when we solve inequalities that have multiplying and dividing, we're still going to take that negative sign with that number to get it away from the variable. We're still going to be doing inverse operation, but what happens is when we go to the opposite side, it also has to flip or reverse our inequality symbol, which in the end is going to reverse the way our graph ends up being graphed. So here right now I'm going to keep it in the order that I have it. I have negative 15 is less than negative 2.5q. So I want to get q by itself, so I'm going to divide by negative 2.5, remembering to take that negative with it. We cannot leave a negative along with the variable by itself. Okay, so whatever I do to one side, I have to do to the other. So now if I take negative 15 divided by negative 2.5, it's going to give me 6, and it's going to be positive because there's two negatives. So now I have 6 is less than q. Well, what we have to remember is because we had a negative with that, we're going to have to flip this symbol around. It's kind of like when I take that negative, it says do the opposite of the inequality also. So really, I'm going to end up graphing 6 is greater than q. So I'm going to go to my number line. I'm going to find 6. It's an open circle because it is not also equal to. And 6 is the bigger number, so smaller numbers would fall this direction. Okay, so that's how I would actually graph that. So we're still going to solve it the same way. Key thing is we have to remember to reverse that inequality symbol. All right, let's go ahead and try another one. Okay, so we have negative 4 times b is greater than or equal to 2. Okay, because that negative is involved with the 4 and the b, I'm going to do like I would normally do before it was multiplying, so I'm going to divide, taking the negative with it. Okay, but when I do that, I have to remember to then reverse this symbol. So when I rewrite it, it becomes b is less than or equal to 2 over negative 4 would be the same as negative 1/2. Now, we could either leave it as fractions or we could do decimals. So if I wanted to see it as a decimal, it would look like this, negative 0.5. So if I did a negative 0.5, maybe negative 0.4, remembering I'm working negatives here. So my order is reversed. I'm going to have a filled in circle on the negative 0.5 or 1/2 if you chose to work the fractions. And then my arrow, well, the negative 5 is bigger, so b is smaller. So my arrow would go this direction. Okay. Most important part, and it's the biggest part that's forgotten. I sometimes forget to do it because I get in a hurry, is to remember to reverse that symbol. Oops. Okay, so here we've got a division one. Okay, so we have m divided by negative 10 on the back side, and then I've got that negative 0.5. So if I want to get that negative 10 out of there, and sometimes what they'll do is they'll put the negative sign like right out in front of the whole fraction. If it's there, take it with the 10 because you cannot leave the negative behind. Okay, so I would go times negative 10. So times negative 10. 0.5 times 10 is going to give me 5. 2 negatives make it a positive 5. Now remember, I took the negative with it, which means I have to reverse this. Okay, that extra step of doing the opposite, we have to remember to do the opposite of the inequality symbol also. Okay, so 5, we'll do 6, 4, and you could put as many numbers as you wanted. Filled in circle on 5. 5 is the bigger number. So we're going to go that direction. or sorry, that was no, it was 5, sorry. I looked at my original thinking I had graphed it incorrectly. Let's try one more. Okay, so we have, oops, get that negative out of there. We have x divided by -2. You guys are used to seeing this written like this. Now, sometimes I'll have that negative sitting outside. That's what I was trying to say in the last problem. So if you'd rather see it as in its fraction format, you can go ahead and rewrite it. Okay, so I would just go times a -2 here to get rid of it. So I find out that x, remember, because it was the negative, I have to flip this. And then 3 times -2 is -6. So I've got -6, I'm working negatives. So this would be -7 this way and -5 this way. Build in circle on -6. And x is the bigger number, so our arrow would point this direction. Okay, I would highly, highly recommend somehow giving yourself a visual cue as to the things that you need to go through and make sure that you're paying attention to, which in this case would be when you've got that negative and you're working multiplying and dividing, maybe circling that inequality symbol for that visual of, hey, remember, don't forget you have to go through and actually reverse that symbol also. All right, so I'm going to give you a couple to try, and then you can check yourself. Okay, so here's 2 problems I'd like you to go through and try. Go ahead and pause your video, do a quick graph. Unless you want to use the graphs that are on your whiteboard, you can do that also. And then check back to your answers. So go ahead and pause now and work your way through these 2 problems. Okay, so take note on this one. One of them, I gave you a negative with the variable, and the other one I did not. So I just want you to double check yourself. The only time you're going to reverse that symbol is if you're taking the negative with the number. Okay, so on this first one, just because there was a negative involved in the back end does not mean that I'm going to do the opposite. It's only when I'm moving that negative to the opposite side that I have to reverse or do the opposite of my inequality. So on the second one, that's why I circled this to remind myself to flip my inequality around. Good luck with this part of the lesson.